Well, we're going to get started because it's 7:31 and we know that people have got things to do and places to go. So we're going to get started with tonight's seminar. So welcome everybody to our second Love Your Lake Zoom seminar series for 2022. As you know, my name is Kirsten and I'm on behalf of the LKO board, which consists of Jan, Wendy, Tanya, Kathy, Bob, Scott, Marilyn, another Scott, and Gary. We're really happy to bring these seminars to you, our LKO community, remembering that these seminars are meant to be informative, have fun, and bring communities together for us all to help and learn how we can protect and bring awareness to our beautiful lake. Welcome, everybody. As a reminder, just for everybody, that after this presentation has happened, there'll be the Q&A. If you sent in your questions, that's great. If not, you'll be using the chat function. We're going to keep everybody muted just so that we can control the whole question and answer period. And we thank you so much for being here tonight. I guess the only last reminder I have for you is a reminder that this is being recorded so that we can have it available to those that are unable to be here tonight. And they can view it on our LKO channel. And those of you that have gone to our LKO channel might also have seen there some YouTube videos called Blake on the Lake. And these YouTube videos are for children, and they, Blake Parkinson, Blake can wave for there. I don't know if everyone can see Blake, but Blake, yeah, do two hands is good. Do two hands. There we go. That's good. Scroll through to find Blake Parkinson. He's the youngest one on this seminar today, so you can't miss him. But Blake, I'll just tell you a little bit about Blake and the reason why we're focusing on Blake tonight a little bit before we get to our guest speaker. But Blake's YouTube series is on our LKO channel, and Blake asks questions to people like what to do about the invading snails, or should you let sunscreen get into the lake, or who's the best target for those nasty mosquitoes. And he's got some really great videos on our channel that he's created, and he's researched and developed the content. And it's really short and sweet and to the point, but really so informative. I highly advise you to go there and check them out. Blake also, during the pandemic, he has his own Instagram channel, of course, or Instagram site, and it's called Planet Protectors. So I would advise everybody who's interested and wants to learn more about the environment, go to Planet Protectors, because that's what Blake does. He just finished a live Instagram post, and I'm sure it was another great success. Blake is an Earth Ranger and has organized numerous garbage cleanups and fundraisers for wildlife conservation. And the reason why we're honoring Blake or talking about Blake tonight is for two reasons. One, that he's being recognized by the Haliburton Highland Land Trust as the 2021 Youth Enviro Hero Awards. So congratulations to Blake for that. But yes, we should all be congratulating Blake. Yes, woohoo! But more importantly, Blake is the LKO's choice for 2021 for our Conservation Award. So we wanted to again applaud Blake for all his great work and that he continues to do. And we're going to give him a few minutes to speak before our guest speaker comes on today. So Blake, over to you and congratulations.
Thank you, Kirsten, for that wonderful intro. So hello, everyone. As you know, my name is Blake Parkinson, and I first want to thank you for honoring me with this year's LKO Conservation Award. It really does mean so much to me. So as you may know, I have been coming to my grandparents' cottage on Lake Keshegwigmog since I was born, and it really has been a powerful influence on me and has helped me create a deep appreciation for the environment. This is one of the reasons why I helped create the LKO Kids YouTube series that I did last year, as you know, called Blake on the Lake. I really enjoyed helping educate people on invasive species, mosquito bites, the impact of sunscreen on our lake, and more. I really appreciate that you recognize the value of those videos in teaching the next generation about the local lake environment. I'd also like to quickly mention that Lake Shagwigmog is what inspired me to start my own Planar Protectors live stream, which is something I now do weekly on Instagram. I'm passionate about other environmental issues, and this has really helped me carry out some of the other initiatives, events, sustainability challenges, and podcasts that I have going on. If you're interested or learning more or helping me join other great organizations that help the environment, I'd love to hear from you. Again, thank you all for your time tonight, and I look forward to meeting with you all in the future.
Thank you so much, Blake. Thank you. And I think I forgot to mention that Blake is 13 years old and in grade 8. So what a great future we have ahead. For us to know that the environment will be in good hands with Blake. So thank you so much, Blake. And you are certainly deserving of both of these awards. So congratulations. And we'll probably do this more, I think, in person at the annual general meeting for the LKO. So thank you again, Blake. Without further ado, I just want to, there we are, our guest speakers popped in. Perfect. I'm going to pass the torch over to Wendy Hampson, our Director of Membership, and she's going to introduce our guest speaker tonight.
If you haven't heard Leora Berman speak before, you are in for a very stimulating seminar tonight. Originally from South Africa, Leora is the founder and chief operating officer of the Land Between charity, where she has a reputation for being passionate about everything environmental that falls into this area of Ontario that bears the same name. The website states that the Land Between charity develops programs and chooses projects that benefit the nature, culture, and socio-economy of the region, while understanding that our well-being is rooted in the health of the natural systems and land around us. Leora has a diverse and impressive background. She is a strategic project manager, soil and water technologist, has studied economics, has diplomas in fine art, and is a recognized leader in the social sector. She began in the trenches, spending years conducting hydrogeological, hydrological, and wetland assessments. Then she designed and delivered environmental remediation and restoration projects, and ultimately grew to developing and managing the large-scale and multi-partnered projects across Ontario, working not only with government, but also with private industry. A major feather in her cap was when she negotiated agreements and formed initiatives to conserve water through the International Joint Commission between Canada and the USA. Leora has received numerous awards for her work, including the prestigious 2019 Roland Michener Conservation Award from the Canadian Wildlife Federation for exceptional work in wildlife research and conservation. Please welcome Leora Berman, a Highlands turtle tail.
Wow, thank you, Wendy, for that introduction. It's strangely humbling to hear that, and you'll see I've got a black cat around, so that's very grounding as well. I'm working out of my home office, so it's a real pleasure to be here, and it is such an honor and very humbling to present in my own community, of course. Tonight I didn't actually rehearse or practice too much, so I figured it would be a bit of a conversation. I'll try and tell you everything about these amazing animals and some of the ways we look to protecting them and why we should protect them for our own benefits in Ontario. I also want to thank LKO. I live across from the lake, and so I'm in the basin, and I previously did your lake study and your report, and so maybe that's something Blake might want to take a look at in terms of what's happening on Kashagawigmog. It's got a really unique history in Ontario, and I could talk for hours about this lake. Its Indigenous history is fascinating, and its settlement history is equally as fascinating. So, and its water chemistry is also fascinating, but I can talk for hours on that. So let's get started. I'll share my screen. Slideshow. So we're going to talk about what has become my favorite animal in the world. And not by choice. Turtles have always just shown up in front of me. So the creator just seems to want me to work with turtles. And so it's been this way ever since. A good colleague of mine, Sue Carstairs at the Ontario Turtle Conservation Centre, and this is where the Turtle Hospital is. It's the only one in Ontario. In Peterborough, they operate on and receive thousands of turtles annually from across Ontario. And she says everyone has a turtle story. And indeed, it's true. Turtles have affected the majority of people on this planet. They live in every biome across the planet except Antarctica. So the extremes of this globe, turtles are found everywhere else. And so most people have a turtle story. And I don't know if you recognize these youngsters, but they're graduates of our camp. And they found hatchlings last year. And so their mom sent in pictures. So turtles have been on this planet arguably longer than the dinosaurs. The first turtle fossils date back to 250 million years. So they are older than dinosaurs. The snapping turtle in its form was found in the exact same shape. So its ancestor was here on this planet 50 million years ago in the Cretaceous period. So turtles have survived 5 apocalypses, 5 major extinctions, and yet now they are facing extinction because of us. So it's quite remarkable. To talk about the turtle, I have to talk about the Anishinaabe creation story. And I find that God speaks in many languages and many ways to people across the globe, and every single story is valid. And so is this one. It is not my story to tell, but I have been given permission by Curve Lake First Nation to recount some of this story for this benefit. So, so the creator created 6 other creations that he or they, because the creator doesn't have a gender, but I'm going to say he was not satisfied with, let's say. And so we are the 7th creation. So to create us, to create humans in this physical form, he asked the underworld species or the aquatic animals that were left from after the flood. You could call it the flood of Noah, could very well be aligned with that. He asked them to help him find the earth that he had flooded at the bottom of the waters. And so one after another animal tried to help, and lo and behold, the one who was successful to find the earth and held its breath the longest was the little muskrat. And the little muskrat floated to the top of the water because he had died in finding the earth. He sacrificed his own life to find that earth. And as he floated up, a turtle was swimming by. And I don't know who it was. Maybe it was God that asked the turtle if he would carry the earth on its back. And so the turtle agreed. And so the creator, God, was creating this reality and this earth for his endeared creation. And we are made in his image, which is an image of love. And so he imbued us with love, and he wanted to make this a very special creation. And so the turtle agreed to hold the earth, and all the animals were made first, and then humans, the youngest beings on this planet, were made. And indeed, if you look at North America, it's what Indigenous people, not just Anishinaabe people, but across North America, most Indigenous people that I know of and nations call this Turtle Island. And indeed, if you look at North America, it does look like a snapping turtle. So the turtle held up the earth, and all the animals came, and then the creator asked the animals if they would teach humans how to live in this world and on this this good creation. And so one by one, the different animals came up, and this is how Indigenous people get their clan system, their totems. And so the bear said, I will teach them about medicines and protecting their communities. And the birds said, I will teach them how to stay in touch with the spirit world and with you, creator. And so one by one, the animals came. And indeed, if you look at genetics, we inherit 40% of our personality through our ancestry. And so that's quite unique. But what else is really unique and bears truth is that a turtle's work is never done. A turtle, and especially the snapping turtle that has been around the longest, is the greatest gardener and the greatest janitor of our aquatic ecosystems. So turtles are keystone species. They are like the cornerstones of a house. They hold up entire food webs. Without turtles doing their job in the environment, 70% of our fish and wildlife in Ontario would suffer. So young snapping turtles they're scavengers, and they're opportunistic scavengers, just like some of the birds may be. And so young turtles need to grow faster and need to grow more. Turtles grow slower the older they are. And so they scavenge at the bottom of the lakes, cleaning up all the dead matter and carcasses. So just like the birds clean up the roads, the turtles clean up our lakes. Without turtles doing this perpetually throughout the year, or not the year, sorry, throughout the summer, then there would be major sources of pathogens. So if we went swimming in our lakes without the turtles doing the best the best cleanup of our lakes, we would probably come out with jock itch. And all kinds of lovely pathogens would proliferate in our lakes without turtles there. The other thing that turtles do, the older the snapping turtle gets, the less protein it needs to eat because it's not growing at the same rate. And so older turtles actually eat more plant matter, seeds, vegetation. And turtles navigate many environments. Their territories are, at least 8 kilometers square up to more. And so it's a complex process, but as they cycle nutrients in the water, and they also help those seeds that they've consumed germinate. So as they move through different environments from upland to lowland and upland to lowland, they're pooping out those seeds and effectively growing new fish habitat and moose habitat, etc. And so without turtles being these amazing gardeners of our wetlands and lakes, we would also be in trouble. So indeed, because 70% of our fish and wildlife rely on wetlands, especially for their survival at some important part of their life cycle, if turtles weren't there holding up those food webs, holding up the ecosystems, they would eventually collapse. And so a turtle definitely holds up the world as the creation story expresses. So that's one interesting thing about that creation story and the role of a turtle, because it rings true. The other thing about a turtle, and which is a symbol of creation rather than evolution, and it's the only species I know of that embodies creation over evolution. So the turtles in North America, the turtles of Turtle Island, all terrestrial, semi-terrestrial turtles. So there are some that are highly aquatic that are soft-shelled, but all hard-shelled turtles have 13 scutes. So those are the large pieces of the shell, of the top shell, and there are 13 full moons every year. And every turtle that has a hard shell has 28 ridges between these marginal scutes, and there are 28 days between each full moon. And so Anishinaabe people use the turtle as a clock. But what's also remarkable about the turtle is it also holds the laws of creation. The way a turtle navigates the world uses earth magnetics. So a turtle knows where it's going because it either has magnetite in its brain, just like the ocean turtle, so it knows where magnetic north is. Or it has cryptochromes in its eyes like birds do, and so it can sense or see the lines of the earth, the lateral lines of the earth, and so it also can see magnetic north. So it's one of those two strategies. The other strategy might be that it has the turtle's eardrums are on the outside of its head, and so some theorize that it can sense the pressure of the earth magnetics and knows where north is. And then a turtle uses the sun for east and west. So a turtle knows where it is and where it's going at all times. So it also imbues the creation of this reality and the laws of this planet in the way it maneuvers. A turtle also is a reptile, so it's ectothermic, and its entire processes are linked to and reflective of what's happening in the environment. So its internal temperature reflects the external temperature. The barometric pressure and the moisture it is why it will be on the roads, or why it will be navigating the roads when it's moist, or when it's rained, or depending on the barometric pressure, you'll see different movements in turtles. So they're interlinked with this planet and with this creation. So that's pretty magnificent. And then we have evidence now that the turtle was around when the creator was creating everything. And we have evidence that the turtle is part of this creation. We have evidence that there is truth to that creation story, that the turtle holds up all of this earth. And so God whispered in the turtle's ear the 7 grandfather teachings to teach us. Now, these are like commandments of how to live a good life. This is the way of the good life. And so they represent the 7 parts of the turtle, and these are the teachings that the Anishinaabeg follow. And so love, honesty, humility, truth, bravery, respect, and wisdom. And the turtle itself represents the teaching of truth, which is quite beautiful, because again, it's showing you the truth of this reality in the way it maneuvers. And so that's quite wonderful as well. So now I'm going to show you something else really neat about turtles and cottage country. We live in a place that we call the land between. It's between the Canadian Shield and the St. Lawrence lowlands. And it's a really unique landscape. The land between is also the place of the greatest collection of glyphs in North America, likely. And this is, I liken it, and I liken it to the teachings of the Bible, but I don't like to compare. There's a lot of pain when I use the Bible in Indigenous ways, because the Bible, or the interpretation of the Bible, was used to abuse Indigenous people. But anyway, it is communications from the Creator to the Anishinaabe and to the people of how to live a good life again. And so these petroglyphs and pictographs mark the land between perfectly from east to west, starting in Mazenah with the great trickster. And the great trickster was the Creator's favorite warrior. One of the stories. There are many, many stories. So I'm going to only recount a story that was shown to me and given to me to tell. But I have to preface this with that there are many, many knowledge holders that are Anishinaabe knowledge holders that can communicate things more appropriately than me. But the great trickster, the great rabbit, was God's favorite warrior. And the rabbit started to fear, or didn't think that God's protection was maybe working or good enough. So lack of faith, started to lose faith. And so the Creator said, fine, and threw him to the ground. And now you're going to call all your fears to you. So he's the great shaman and the great trickster. Because you don't start looking for the Creator until you go through hell. Right? Until something's wrong, you don't start hoping that there's a great spirit. And so this is how God calls us. It starts with this. So it's a journey from east to west. And so it's also there's so many stories to these petroglyphs and pictographs. So again, I have to tell you that I'm only telling you one of multitudes of interpretations. But when you reach the petroglyphs, these are the only pictures, or these are the only ones that are etched in rock, and these are called the teaching rocks. And the species that are depicted in the petroglyphs are the turtle, the skink, the snake, the thunderbird. And so this is the school of where you find the truth, and to find that truth is hard work. And so pain etched in stone, and the symbol of the turtle, the symbol of the skink. The skink is the dreaming of this life. It symbolizes the holiness of this life that is given to us. And then the snake is the way this is the world of duality, right? The snake, it was light and dark and evil and good, and God said it was good. This is how we learn and grow, through that duality, to transcend the duality. And so I want you to remember the snake, the skink, and the turtle are here. Once you learn that truth, you need to heal. And of course, the symbol of fish at Minjikaning, of plenty, of healing, of restoration and reparation. And this was a place of peace. And this is transcendence. This is the big canoe. This is the ascending to the promised land, you could liken it to. But this is the pattern that the Creator talks to humankind throughout the world, in every teaching and in every Bible. And here in the land between, we have this amazing pattern. So why is that important? Well, if you look at the land between, it is the last stronghold for the turtle. 32% of turtles in Ontario are in this landscape. It is one of the last strongholds for snakes. 1/4 of all Ontario snakes are here. And it is 95% of the skink. So those 3 species that are pictured in the petroglyphs are the last, this is the last stronghold for those 3 species. So there's your beginning story of a turtle. Why do they gravitate here? The land between, which is between the Canadian Shield and St. Lawrence lowlands, is the place of the highest percentage of shoreline to area. So we've got the highest density of shorelines in Ontario, but exactly where those shorelines are rock. We have the majority or the most rock barrens. We've got an abundance of rock barrens compared to anywhere else in Ontario. And that rock is exactly where the water is, so no absorption capacity, etc. But who loves rock and water? Reptiles love rock and water. So you've got, they need rock to bask because to regulate their temperature, and most reptiles are highly aquatic. And so this is why this is a stronghold for turtles. And again, I can talk forever about the land between and these different features, but I'll move on. The land between is also a patchwork of habitats of high to low. So that rock and water is almost dancing. It dances from high to low to wet to dry to alvar to rock barren to river to wetland to lake to meadow over and over. And nowhere else in Ontario, if Canada, would you see this mosaic of habitats. And the problem with that is, so it was mostly intact because it's hard to blast through rock, which is, but now this is 2006. This Google Earth image of the land between, which you can see in this lovely green, it was 84% natural cover. It has been reduced. I think we're looking at something less than 70% or around 70% in the last, well, especially in the last 3 years, but rapid destruction. Now we think we're not doing damage because we don't see over yonder the highs and lows over the hills and valleys. We just see trees in our backyard and think there's no cumulative effect, but there is. So now we get to Mr. Turtle himself. So I hope I haven't bored you yet, but this is the context for the turtle story. So here's the little guy, little snapping turtle. For a snapping turtle or any turtle to reach sexual maturity, it takes them an average of 20 years. So humans will reach sexual maturity between 12 and 15, unless some of the hormones in our food have changed that. But generally that's when we can reproduce. But a turtle takes even longer. So that's one unique issue that turtles face. And that's an issue because turtles don't just live in one wetland. Turtles have multitudes of habitats. They have their own territories. So they navigate between their overwintering site, and usually they have to cross the road to their feeding site or their mating site. And then they either have to cross a residential property or a highland or somewhere with dogs, or you never know. And then they reach their summer grounds, and then they have to cross for their next feeding grounds. And then, you know, the moon and the shorter days says it's time to hibernate, and then they cross again. So to reach sexual maturity at the age of 20, they've had to cross roads over and over and over again throughout their lifespan. So I don't know if you recall, I said an average territory of a turtle is 8 kilometers. In the land between, which is this outline here, for every kilometer squared of area, we have 0.78 kilometers of road. So if you've got an 8 kilometer squared habitat, you're gonna you know intercept at least 9 roads every year for your life. If you live south of the land between, the road density goes up to 1.5, so it's just less than double. So that's one issue facing turtles. And I have to tell you this to tell you a turtle story, because that's what turtles navigate every year. And so it's the highest threat to turtle populations is road mortality. This map is also on a human footprint map. So I asked our GIS technician to put together the human footprint in Ontario. So the green is the only areas that are untouched. So like I said, we used to have 84% natural cover. This map is from 2021. So you can see there are very few untouched areas left. And then the road density. So where humans live, that creates a lot of other problems for turtles, because we don't live with nature. We don't live with trees and shrubs in our backyard. We like to terraform and change nature. So that creates another problem. So I'm going to show you the annual journey once a turtle reaches sexual maturity and has navigated roads and residences for 20 years, and they are ready to reproduce. This is their journey every year. So a turtle that's ready to reproduce, a snapping turtle, would be about 12 inches. That's about their carapace size, so you can sort of tell, but they're also very spunky. They're like teenagers, and they're the ones that'll jump and try to defend themselves on the road. So it's pretty easy to see a teenager snapping turtle or a new adult in terms of their behavior. Older turtles are very mellow and little turtles are very scared. So sorry about this picture for any youngsters here. This is actually likely two turtles fighting rather than mating, but I didn't have any good mating pictures. But a turtle's life starts in the spring when it's come out of hibernation. A turtle will either mate in the fall because turtles can hold on to semen, to sperm, and they can use that. I think there's a 2-year shelf life to just the female can hold on to that. But they typically mate either in the fall or in the spring, in March to April. So they're getting acquainted with each other. And then as things start to warm up a little bit, turtles coming out of hibernation are very sore because their external temperature, the external temperature matches their internal temperature and guides and governs their metabolism and their immune system. So when they are brumating, so they're not actually asleep, but when they're awake and moving very slowly, their hearts beat maybe a couple times a minute, a few times a minute underwater in the ice. And I'll tell you about hibernation later, but they're still using energy, and yet, so they're expending energy and it's very hard for them to move and it takes a lot of effort. And so they're building up lactic acid. It's like doing a very long marathon for them. And so in order to move that lactic acid out of their system, they're a bit groggy and they move very slowly in the spring. They need to warm up so that their metabolism increases and they can metabolize that lactic acid. So you'll see turtles in April coming out of the wetlands and just hanging out right near those wetlands. One of the first turtles to come out in the spring, and they don't seem to have as much issue with the cold temperature, and we don't quite know why. There's so much undiscovered about turtles. But that's this little guy, the spotted turtle, and he's an endangered turtle, and he's really cute. This is a threatened turtle, Blanding's turtle, and so they're coming out. And then you'll also see in April and maybe late April to early May, you'll see them all basking, trying to warm up in these groups. And snapping turtles don't normally bask, but you'll see them near the surface, and sometimes they'll be on roads. When the temperature hits above 17 degrees in the morning at 10 a.m., so that's the sweet spot, then turtles will be on the move. Then they feel they're warm enough and they're mobile enough to move. And again, turtles will be coming out of the water like this guy, and they'll move onto roads to warm up because tarmac is nice and warm. And they'll also be migrating when it's safe, like at that temperature, it's safe for them. They'll be migrating to their feeding sites or even their summer sites. And so on the roads around May, you'll see equal males and females, or not equal, but the likelihood is that there's as many males moving as females. And so this is where you start to see turtles on roads in May. And of course, it's really hard to see these little guys sometimes. There's a lot of myths around turtles that need to be overturned. So that's what's happening in May. What's happening in May and early June as well, or late May when it's nice and warm, is there are certain species that can overwinter in their nests. So in May, these little turtles come out of their nests. So painted turtles can overwinter successfully, Blanding's turtles can. And so on the roads, this is me finding a turtle on the road, and I tell the kids at turtle camp to have turtle vision on. And so you're looking for little rocks with tails. Flat rocks with tails. If that rock is moving, that's a baby turtle. So we find many, many baby turtles coming out in May. So that's what happens then. In June, all the adult turtles that have reached maturity are ready to nest. And so if a female has been impregnated and is ready to lay eggs, they can't hold on to those eggs or they will suffer. And they nest in, again, it's governed by temperature and moisture it takes a lot of effort for a turtle to nest, and they have to be well hydrated. So this is another very vulnerable time. And so in June, starting early June and for the whole month of June is nesting season, and the majority of turtles on roads are females. And they're in these very precarious positions because we have created the ideal habitats for turtles. First of all, the road is dissecting the wetland. The wetland is not inconveniently at the side of the road. So we've placed roads right through their territories and their prime habitats. We haven't raised them up or created any underpasses. And then turtles are good mothers in that they are very precise in their choice of nesting structures or nesting substrate. So they want nice, open to the sun, solar radiation on their nests. So hey, maintained roadsides are perfect. And then the sand and gravel is a perfect pack for moisture, because when we actually excavate nests, it's this perfect cavern, and all of them have a perfect temperature and moisture. It's quite incredible. So you'll see turtles digging dummy nests around and some theories say that they're digging multiple dummy nests to test the substrate, but also to fool predators. We don't know which it is, maybe it's both, but when they nest at the side of the road, it could take hours. The turtle can take 6 hours to nest, and they're very dehydrated after they nest. And they're very wobbly and they're extremely vulnerable. And again, these are the females. So we have many people, bait fish operators and colleagues, friends who say, we see tons of turtles in our lake or the wetland. So there is a skew, it's skewed in terms of the population towards males because many of these females are dying on roads. And the other thing about a turtle on the road, people who like to help turtles, we've all told volunteers and the public to help a turtle in the direction it's going, except in the month of June. If you see disturbed earth behind a turtle, the thing with a turtle is this one you can see is it looks like it's heading to the road, but she's actually doing a U-turn towards the wetland because she needs to get rehydrated right away. So they go onto the road doing this very wide, slow, wobbly U-turn. And so some people mistakenly move them across the road, and I have done this and mistakenly, and the turtle was killed on the way back across because again, they know where they're going and they know where they need to be. These are snapping turtle eggs. They look like ping pong balls. So this is the cavern of a turtle nest. It's quite incredible. It's meticulous in how it's built. So the issue, again, with living near humans in ex-urban or rural habitats is we encourage, or certain species love to live around humans. They like our garbage. They feel safer around us. They're not deep in forests. And so they survive better near human altered landscapes. That includes white-footed mice, which is why we have ticks right now, because they piggyback on white-footed mice. And white-footed mice love our open landscapes. But the other thing that we attract are more foxes, more raccoons, and more skunks. And so this is called subsidized predation. So within 24 hours of where we live in Haliburton County, nests will be predated within 24 hours, and 99% of those nests will be predated. So this is the other challenge a little turtle faces. And so this means there's very few turtles or eggs that will survive to even have a chance of reaching adulthood. So this is another, within 24 hours, a raccoon has dug this up or something. So under a wildlife permit, our staff and some of our volunteers dig up turtle nests, like Meredith here is digging them up, and we incubate them. In fact, Turtle Guardians, the Land Between Charity, is now the third largest incubation operation in Ontario. So if they survive, like after the adults are done and done their nesting, it's usually July. In July, the heat is too hot. So again, turtles are comfortable at about 17 degrees. And yet in July, it reaches way above 27 degrees. And sometimes it can reach a lethal temperature for turtles, which is 32 degrees. So if a turtle reaches that temperature, it can overheat and it will have massive heat stroke. And I'm not quite sure what's happening internally, but you can imagine how fast that heart is beating. And so turtles are not on roads typically in July to August because it's way too hot. They might be in the evenings, but they're generally hanging out in the wetlands and lakes. And you can see turtles just hanging and swimming, unless of course it rains, because turtles feel very comfortable in water. And so if it rains, it's usually less than 32 degrees, and turtles might be encouraged to move around because they feel very safe in the rain. The other thing that happens in the middle of the summer is a lot of development. And this little guy is called a stink pot or a musk turtle. It's also a threatened species, so it's pretty rare. This is about as big as they grow. Sometimes they can grow the size of a mango. And again, it does the job just like a snapping turtle. It eats dead matter and moves seeds around and cycles nutrients in the lake. And this little musk turtle loves to live at shorelands. So shallow, what you would maybe interpret as weedy shorelands, because turtles love to hide. So white water lilies and lots of hiding places is where these little musk turtles or stink pots live. And so a lot of them get buried, and we've removed their habitat. The other thing that happens in the lakes in the summer in Haliburton is persecution, poaching and pets, and relocation, because there's a lot of myths around turtles, especially these lovely snapping turtles, because they look like dinosaurs, they look ferocious, and yet they're not. So turtles like to hide. This is not our staff, but we swim with turtles. So this is Beekler at our office, and this is his brick, and he's always hiding his head in his brick. And so you might find a turtle underneath your dock on the lake. And they like the dock because it's a great hiding place. But turtles are typically shy and curious but shy, and they'd rather be away from humans. And in the water, they're the top swimmers, top predators, and they have nothing to fear. So turtles only snap there's one of two reasons a turtle will snap. And the first reason is, you can see, we call this a bikini shell. Its plasteron, its undershell, is too tiny for it to hide. It's nice and chubby, and a turtle can't tuck in and hide. So it has no other recourse when on land, when threatened, than to snap. In water, its recourse is to swim away. But on land, painted turtle is the best runner of the turtles, and a baby can outrun a painted turtle, right? A human baby could beat a painted turtle in a race. And so a snapping turtle can't really run. They don't have hips. So they don't move the same way we do, and they can't move fast. And so they don't have anywhere to hide. We tower over these turtles on land, and we seem to like to get right in their face, and then we complain about them snapping. So that's one myth about turtles. But the other reason turtles would snap is that turtles, again, are opportunistic scavengers and eaters. Turtles can go without food for months. Indeed, in the winter, though their metabolism slows down so they don't need to eat, they go for food without months. But even in the summer, a turtle doesn't have to eat for months and months. Turtles are really unique that way. So when people fish off their docks, over and over again with lovely minnows or worms, this is a fresh, ready source of protein for a turtle hiding under a dock. And I've made the mistake of feeding our turtles in captivity, our ambassador turtles, in their stock ponds. So they live in big horse stock ponds. And when I'm lazy and I don't want to put them in their feeding buckets full of water, I just throw them a minnow. And then the next thing I do is, when I peer over, they're ready to snap at whatever's going to fall in the water. So that's the other reason a turtle may snap. But the other myth about a turtle is that the snap, so this is a huge turtle, and that jaw size is maybe the size of Grace's mouth, but not quite, because it starts here. So it doesn't have the torque to bite off adult or large child fingers and toes. We haven't tested this with infants, so maybe it could take off the tip of an infant toe. But we have tested this with a bigger turtle that's called Titanic at Scales Nature Park, and we used pigtails. Turtle couldn't bite it in half. We used carrots. Titanic, who is 25 pounds, so about twice the size of this turtle, could not bite a carrot in half, a decent carrot. We used broom handles, couldn't break them in half. We used a willow like a fresh willow couldn't break a fresh willow stem in half, maybe a dead willow stick. So a turtle has a beak just like a bird, and it's quite sharp because that's its only defense. It's got to have some way to defend itself. But most turtles are really scared, like this little guy that can't even look at Sienna who's holding him. So that's what happens in the summer. Now, if a turtle makes it through, so we've heard of people dragging turtles out of their lakes and butchering them because they're afraid of them harming their grandchildren. And so we offer people to swim with the turtles, and we take our GoPro and show people how easy it is to swim with turtles, because indeed there were hundreds more turtles around these lakes than there are today. A good friend of mine, Murray Wheatung, who passed away last year at the age of 99, said when he was a kid, across his lawn at Curve Lake First Nation, where he grew up in the Kawarthas, there would be turtles every day, 4 or 5 turtles just walking across his lawn, regular thing. And then in the last few years, he maybe was lucky to see one in a summer. So you can imagine the decline. So Indigenous people swam in these lakes, canoed in these lakes, fished in these lakes, and no issue. And so we go swimming with turtles. And when a turtle sees that it's a full human, they're afraid of us, even in the water. So they just like to get away from us. So that's one thing. So the other thing is people like to take turtles home as pets. So I'll go back to that slide. They think turtles are cute when they're little. They are very cute. That's how we got Beekler. The issue with that is turtles don't adapt easily to change. So you're taking, so what happens is when they're very young, their brain is very plastic. I don't know if you've heard this term or not, but so are human brains. We can learn languages very quickly, and we embed them in what's called semantic memory. So it's a relational memory center in our brain at the back of our hippocampus. Don't want to get into too many details. So we've got episodic memory, which is just episodes, and we've got this longer term memory center, and the two relate to each other. So as kids, we just embed language and we embed faces. And so turtles are doing the same thing when they navigate. And so they lose that ability, or that ability diminishes rapidly after the age of 4. And when you relocate a turtle, it's very distressed. It's like taking an old woman who's lived in an apartment for 80 years and moving her to New York City, or to somewhere to Texas, or they're extremely distressed. They often stop eating and they want to go home. And so research says that they try to get home and they default north. It's the most relaxing way to travel. And then they're encountering new roads. And if they're lucky enough to overwinter in a hibernation site that has the right requirements, it's unlikely that they would remember that site readily again. So when you relocate a turtle from your lake to somewhere else, you're basically signing its death warrant. It's not a simple thing to relocate a turtle. So that's another mistake people make. And then when they take them home as pets and then release them after the age of 4, that turtle has a very hard time surviving. It doesn't know how to be a turtle, really, and find the places it needs. So it's equivalent to relocating a turtle. So those are the mistakes humans make. So persecution, poaching, turtles used to be killed under fish and wildlife permits by the ministry, I think in the 40s, because there was an assumption that turtles were competing with our fisheries. Where if the turtles didn't, so turtles, the young snappers may take a duckling or live minnow, and it's going to have to go after those, and it's got to be really hungry to try and go after those. And yet ducklings reproduce, or ducks, will have 6 to 10 offspring a year. A turtle recruitment rate, so the rate at which it replaces itself in nature, is every 30 years you'll have 1 egg succeed to become an adult. And the turtle has to reach sexual maturity in the first place. So every 35 to 40 years, you'll get 1 egg that survives to reach adulthood. So that's 1 in 1,000 eggs on average will make it. And yet the turtle has to be sexually mature at the age of 20. So you're looking at about 60 years for every turtle lost to replace that turtle. So that's a bit about turtles there. Now, what happens with those lovely eggs in the ground is that temperature determines the sex of the turtle. So if the temperature, just like turtles are, again, so connected to the earth, they truly represent this earth and this planet, really. And so they're sensitive to, again, moisture, temperature, you name it. And so if the temperature for most species is too cool or cool, there's a skewed ratio of males. So you'll have more males when the ambient temperature for many days is cool. If we have a very hot summer, the skew for most species is towards females. And if the temperature goes bumpity bump up and down and around the bend, like it has lately, the skew is also towards females. Now, maybe that's the creator's way of correcting things so we have more breeders, I'm not sure. But with climate change, that's making things a little difficult in Southern Ontario for turtles. And so this is why we say climate change is going to have a major impact on the recruitment rate of turtles in Southern Ontario. And here, maybe in cottage country in the land between, because it was cooler previous to climate change, maybe it's going to correct some of the previous skews. We don't know yet, but it's pretty interesting that they will be affected by climate change in those ways. So if the turtles have survived and they haven't, if they've survived in the eggs and the nest has survived, what happens is they're ready after they've gestated. And you saw that picture of, this is an embryo of a turtle at our office. So you can see the turtles moving in there. So if they've survived, then the turtles begin to pip out. So every turtle has a little baby tooth that only lasts 24 hours, or I think it's about 24 hours. And they talk to each other in the nest like little birds. So they're actually chirping at each other to tell each other it's ready, like it's time to come out. And so in our incubators at the office, I kind of worry as soon as one nest starts to hatch, there's a crescendo of hatching of 5,000 turtle eggs all at once, because you can't stop them from telling each other what's going on. And so that is a Blanding's turtle. This is from our office. This is a little snapping turtle coming out. You can see, you can't really see his tooth, but there he is coming out and pipping out. And in nature, so that turtle that laid the egg and the eggs survived, all those things. And there are miracles that do happen and they do survive. So they'll be communicating and they're pipping out because they actually climb on top of each other. They're sort of like a moving ladder in order to get out of that hole. So there they are coming out, and they're nice and dirty, so they're very well camouflaged when they come out. And again, we can already see this imprinting of their nest site. So again, God like stamps their brain and says, this is your nest site. So turtles will return to the site that they are born if they are females to lay their eggs. So there's evidence that shows they have this amazing little, maybe the creator whispers in their ear and says, this is where you were born. We have no idea how that's done. There are too many amazing things about these species, but this is a clutch of eggs. And I've got a better picture. I just ran out of time, but because they're not at their nest site in the office, the majority of turtles will face north. So we have all these clutches ready to go back to exactly where they were laid. So when we excavate a nest, we take note of its location, their location, and our wildlife permits say they have to be reintroduced to nature within 1 kilometer of where they were laid. And so in the office, they all face north. The majority of them face north when they're on the shelves ready to go back out. If they were the clutch that you saw here, this was by the office, and I put a cage over this nest so it would survive. And I excavated these little guys because they're pretty vulnerable as well. They'll be eaten as well. And at the bottom of it takes about 2 to 3 days for a nest to evacuate, because at the bottom, the little ones aren't as ready as the ones at the top, because the temperature differentiation means, and the moisture differentiation means that they were a bit cooler perhaps. And so they're not as well developed. So it takes them 2 or 3 days until their yolk sac has been absorbed and they're ready to come out. So I excavated these guys, and when I brought them to the office, all of them faced their nest. It was just incredible. And I would turn the bowl around and around, and they always faced their nest. Now, if that's not miraculous, it's just incredible. So this is when they come out. It's usually in August. And there's that landings turtle that came out of the egg, and there's the little snapper. And this is how tiny they are. So a painted turtle sometimes will come out in August. They usually overwinter up here. But this is the size of most baby turtles, the size of a loony or a toonie. And so their first journey is really important. They already know where their nest site is, and they're already making spatial memories. They're etching spatial memories in that incredible brain of theirs. These are turtles we found at the side of 118. So we were moving them to the closest water. So scientists believe that that first journey from their nest site to water is really important in terms of their ability to survive. And I have a theory that turtles are also following pheromone trails, because reptiles like pheromone trails, so that the adult turtles and their navigation to water and their navigation to hibernation sites is actually leading little turtles as well, where to go, so that they're not just running willy-nilly. But nowadays, with the lack of adult turtles, because the populations in Ontario have declined so much, that I wonder if they have less of a chance to find water because there are less of their family members around to leave scent trails. This is a turtle trail in the sand. This is what it looks like with these. You can see the paddle feet. These are the feet here. There's also probably a tire mark over here, but the central little spine with these little paddle feet. So they're already beginning to etch spatial memories from and etch out their territories. So again, in the first 4 years of a turtle's life, they have marked their territories in their brains. They have etched that memory in their brains, and it's really not a good idea to relocate them. And so these little guys are just amazing creatures. But where were they born? They were born, most of them, at the sides of roads, because we've created this ideal nesting structure for turtles. And so they, year after year, they come back to nest, and the little ones, if they hatch, come out on the road. Some sand beaches are good sites for turtles as well, but we have lots of roads in Haliburton and the Highlands, and this is where they come out. And this is an older turtle, but look at how small it is, pretty hard to see. This truck did move, which was wonderful, but many people just don't notice, especially if they're texting and driving, or it's pretty hard to spot a turtle. And the other thing with a turtle is, especially the box-shaped turtles like this Blandings turtles, is they just freeze and hide. So now they're stuck on the road. They don't unfreeze for quite a few minutes because they're terrified. So they're in the middle of the road longer. So that makes them more vulnerable. But that little hatchling now has to make it across the road and has to find water, and birds are, we've seen ravens, they're just eating up the baby turtles. Hawks will do that as they're traveling. We've seen even raccoons sitting as turtles are coming out of the nest, and they'll chew them up. And then if the turtle is lucky enough to find water, well, fish love to feed on turtles, especially bass. And so they've got predators right in the water, and some adult turtles, if they're really hungry, might feed on small turtles. They're very stinky, they're easy to smell out, and so they're easy prey. Now, 100 years ago, when Murray Wheatongue was alive, there were hundreds and hundreds of turtle eggs, and there were hundreds and hundreds of adults laying turtles, and less of a human footprint, so more of a chance of survival. So again, now the ratio now, the 1 in 1,000 is current times. That's how many are surviving. So that is August, and the little turtles are making their way. And so you might see turtles on the road in August, and usually they'll be tiny little snappers. So again, moving rocks with tails. Now we move to September, and I know I'm talking so much, and I'm sorry, I'm trying to go fast. So September to October, the daylight is less, so we've got less light during the day, and that's a signal to turtles that winter is coming, and the temperatures are cooler, but it's mainly the solar, the amount of solar time that they're getting that signals that to turtles that winter's coming, and so they stop eating, because turtles, again, their metabolism is based on the ambient temperature. And so if it's going to be freezing, you don't want anything in your belly to rot in your gut over winter. So turtles stop eating at about 2 weeks before they start their migration towards their hibernation site. And again, that migration is usually across roads. So every step of their life is across these roads or interacting with humans who don't know enough about them. And so we see a lot of turtle deaths. I won't stay on this picture very long. This is a huge loss. This is a female turtle, I can tell because of her mouth. And so that's a big loss for this species that is extremely vulnerable and on the way to extinction. The stats are if we lose 20% of snapping turtles in 20 years, they will be locally extinct. So you can have local extinctions. We've lost 50% at least of turtles generally across Ontario. And 70% of all turtles globally are on a species at risk list, are in danger of becoming extinct. Slow moving, very specific requirements, and we just don't have patience to get to know them. So what's also a miracle about turtles is turtles are miraculous healers. So they heal in amazing ways. This is Jeremiah. She's actually a female. We thought she was male until she had an X-ray and she has a latent egg in her. She's female, but we kept the name Jeremiah because it suits her. And Jeremiah can't walk or swim because her spine is part of her carapace. So a turtle's spine is their top shell, and they're part of their lung cavity as well. And so it was crushed, and so she lost the use of her back legs. But after 4 years of physiotherapy, she can now almost push with her back legs. So reptiles can regrow nerve tissue. No other animal can do that. So the medical field is trying to understand how that happens. So Jeremiah, I'm hoping in 10 years, will be able to walk. You never know. She loves her skateboard. It's like her wheelchair. So we made a skateboard for her out of a cheese board. So we made a wheelchair, and she spins around on this wheelchair. So turtles can survive massive injuries. It's quite miraculous. We have another turtle named Timothy. He lost half of his shell, and for some reason his tail still works, and he loves to swim and climb with his tail, and he's just another miracle. The other really amazing thing about turtles is you might think a turtle is dead on the road, but its heart will beat for 4 days after it's dead, after every other vital sign is missing. So you can bring turtles back from the dead, basically. So again, I think God has kissed these species and told them to teach us a thing or two about life. So winter comes, and turtles have hopefully made it to their hibernation sites, and it's winter freeze. And this is a turtle under the ice. You might think that they're sleeping, but they're just moving very, very slowly because they can't move quickly. In terms of what they prefer in terms of hibernation sites, it's surprising. It's usually the unremarkable wetlands, especially for snapping turtles. So snapping turtles choose these sort of weedy, small, unremarkable wetlands because a turtle needs a very stable environment to survive the winter. And so smaller wetlands go under a deep freeze and have a nice thick layer of ice. And that means that the temperature under that ice stays very stable because the water level is stable. So the oxygen and the temperature is stable. So they can rely on that wetland not to change, and so they can survive in the winter. And they also need that thick layer of ice as a barrier between all the snowstorms and everything that's going on outside and what's happening under the ice. So again, very stable environment. And they need that stable oxygen, so again, they can survive, but turtles actually choose colder areas to overwinter. So they look for areas at about 4 degrees Celsius. The colder it is, the less energy they have to expend. So as long as it's just below freezing, they're happy. So that's why these small wetlands work really well for turtles. And so in Ontario, we have lost, in Southern Ontario, which Cottage Country is part of, we seem to think we're Central Ontario, but look at how big Ontario is. So in the southern half of the province, we've lost more than 70% of our wetlands. And again, it's the road that dissects the wetlands and is inconvenient to all the wildlife here. 70% of our wildlife rely on wetlands at some part of their life cycle. And so this is the wetland loss. There's 100% 65, 80, and now we're beginning to see wetland filling and draining across cottage country and the land between as people run to the country to escape COVID or whatever is going on. And so wetland loss is a big deal. It costs municipalities thousands, because wetlands are important for biodiversity, fish and wildlife. They're really important for carbon sequestration. In Dysart, for instance, really important for flood control, water regulation, filtration. They also are important water recharge. So we've got fractured bedrock as our aquifer, where our aquifers are. And so wetlands hold on to water and slowly recharge those aquifers and are important for our drinking water supplies. Wetlands are also important places for medicines and food sources. And we have now discovered wetlands have certain bacteria that eat pathogens. So if you live next to a wetland, you're less likely to get sick. So that's wetlands, and yet we've lost them and we think that they're wastelands. The other thing cool about turtles is that turtles will lay eggs their entire lives, and they live a very, very long time. So a 100-year-old turtle will continue laying eggs. There is no menopause for turtles. So now I'm going to get to saving Grace. So this is Grace. I called her Grace because it is by God's grace that this turtle is still alive, because her territory is right downtown Halliburton. She also has one eye, so either someone poked that out, which is likely, and God knows when. So she's traveled across these roads year after year with one eye, and so this is why her name is Grace. Grace is the largest female turtle we have on record across all our partners. So this is 7 or 8 groups that record and conserve turtles, that research and conserve turtles in cottage country. And so Grace is the largest and therefore the oldest female on record. How long do turtles live? I'm sorry, this is skewed. This says carapace length, and this says age. And this is males, and this is females, I believe. So you can see that the males can live more than 400 years. It's likely that they live 240 years, and that females also live 240 years. At Grace's size, I think this is Grace's size right here, you're looking at least 125 years old. She could be older, but we don't know. I think, sorry, this is Grace's size right here. So this is female in pink, and of course, blue is male. She's 38 centimeters. She's way past. So we can't tell her age specifically, but she's way past 125 years. And we have no way of knowing exactly how old she is. So again, that's why her name is Grace. And turtles need to live that long because the creator is fair. So God's fair in what the creator does. So if you're only going to have one successful hatchling every 30 years, if you live for 1,000 years, like some indigenous people have indicated, you're going to have 12 or 13 successful offspring. If you live for 100 years like Grace, and hopefully she lives longer, so say you live 125 years, maybe you'll have 4 successful offspring. We'll see, but that's about the average. Grace was first introduced to us by the school, actually. One of the school bus drivers called us to move Grace because she was in front of the school. And so this is James Dunsmore, who also found Grace later. So there were a few reports of her. There she is close up. It's not as attractive. In 2020, we were called again to move Grace, and we moved her to Kashagawigmog Lake. And we have been told there's a family there at your lake that has where Grace hangs out under their dock every summer, and they take measurements of her every year. So that's pretty neat. So she's well known to a family at the north end of Kashag. When we discovered Grace and we measured her, I started the Saving Grace campaign. So you would have seen posters all around the community alerting people in this area in Dysart to watch out for Grace on the roads. We offered $125 rewards to help the 125-year-old turtle across the road. We train people in terms of how to handle snapping turtles and how to hold them. And so then we got more and more accounts from the community. There are teachers at the high school that saw Grace. There are art students who took classes there and saw Grace at the window. And then someone told me that the principal, I'm not sure which one, used to see Grace when he was a child on the high school grounds. So we initiated a monitoring program where Grace is. This was a second account of Grace. So this cottager called me in October of 2020. So that winter, we found Grace heading back from Kashagawigamog to her wetland at Dysart. And that's where she went. And she was so heavy. I've carried her twice, but she weighs over 20 pounds. I think we have her at 21 pounds. And it doesn't sound like a lot, but when it's a snapping turtle who's very scared and trying to get out of your hands, that's a lot of weight. So we put her in a wheelbarrow. So there's Grace again. And we have video footage of her going into the wetland. And this is part of our volunteer team on Galert Road, where we know she hibernates on one or the other side of the road. But there's also other turtles that hibernate in that wetland on both sides of the road. So these are early May pictures of other turtles where they're coming out to bask or they're mating. And this is from a video I have of Grace coming out on May 17th last year. So May 17th would be about the time that she's ready to travel to her summer ground after she was also spotted mating, or another turtle was mating with her. So I have video footage of that too, and she's coming out on the side of the wetland that was filled in. It's really unlikely that she would have crossed from the high school side to the other side of the wetland to find a mate or to, at that time of year, it's more likely that she hibernates on the side in question, but of course we can't say for sure. We sent a team out to try and find her again and had the Saving Grace campaign. And then in June or late May of that year, she was reported crossing the high school ground. I think she was headed towards Head Lake. And so this is Kristen Bennett. She lives locally and it was her first day on the job and she processed Grace. So we've got her measurements. We sexed her and we made sure she was female, and then and weighed her. So this is our team doing that. This is Grace upside down. She looks much smaller. And there she is. Isn't she gorgeous? This is the wetland in question. This wetland has been mapped as an environmentally protected zone for more than 30 years. I have maps from doing the Lake Kashagawigamog Lake Plan from the settlement time. So late 1800s, Immigration Company of Canada, before the Trent Severn dams were put in. We've done a lot of research on the history and culture of the land between. I don't know if you've seen our documentary, but we have talked to, it took us 4 years of talking to museums and historians and you name it. And this entire area actually was wetland and filled in, especially around the high school, to make way for that high school. So, and also it wasn't actually for the high school, it was actually to direct waters for the Trent Severn Waterway Storage Lake, the way water would flow to help direct water down for lumbering, etc., and the dam system. And so this, we know this wetland was here for more than 30 years as well, because the road department, the county road department, said they had to put a special treatment across this section of the road so it wouldn't sink. So in terms of geotechnology, they had to do really interesting netting to make sure that the road would float. And that means these are very deep organic soils, and deep organic soils take thousands of years to form at that level. So this has always been a wetland. So that was definitely a wetland as long as Grace has been alive. So at least 125 years, because turtles do not change hibernation sites unless they have to. They can adapt, like if this is her hibernation site, then she may be able, she'll come here if it's filled in and say, like, if he gets a permit, this landowner gets a permit from the long story, but we'll talk about that in a second. If it becomes filled in, then maybe she can adapt using this wetland. She'll have to, but you know, it's likely that this has been her hibernation site for her entire life. Now, again, one turtle off the wall, a bottle off the wall, one turtle comes down and is no longer around. That's generations of turtles, right? So you're removing generations of turtles when you're removing an adult from the the environment. And that's because adults are also those keystone cornerstones of the house. They keep populations stable because adults don't have natural threats. Youngsters have all kinds of threats that I've just shown you, never mind roads, but all the bass and the fish and the predators. They've got many threats. And yet an adult turtle doesn't have many natural threats. God didn't build them to withstand the weight of a car, but yeah, they were made to last. And and they're very loyal to their hibernation sites. So this is the wetland in question. This was the fill that was placed in. I had assumed that the landowner had a permit through the municipality because we had been monitoring the site. And when we talked to him about the fill placed on the edges, it's now hearsay, so I don't want to get into hearsay, but we understood that the landowner had fill until this winter when this fill was placed on the open water. And we knew not only from talking to the landowner that there was no permit, but also there was no way a permit would have been issued because this is not just home to overwintering turtles that cannot get out of the way. No authority would give a permit to fill in the winter and possibly entomb turtles. That's just not typical of any regulatory authority or any process, any review process. So clearly there was no review. And so unlikely a permit. And also it was open water. It's also endangered species habitat. So these are other species found in this wetland basin that are not Grace. Grace is a snapping turtle. So she's not covered under the Endangered Species Act. She's covered under the Fish and Wildlife Conservation Act. And so that's when we discovered there was no permit because there's no way. And as soon as I discovered this was happening and after I understood there was no negotiation, I called the Ministry of the Environment, and I also called the township and was told by the staff that they didn't have the tools they needed to do anything about it. And so we called everyone. We called DFO, Department of Fisheries and Oceans, etc. And it was the minister. It was a Friday afternoon, and the minister himself called me Saturday afternoon and had us talk with the landowner and asked them to stop. So it was quite a discovery that Dysart et al. Does not have the standard zoning bylaws or provisions under their zoning bylaw. There was also this deflection that was happening where people were saying it's not municipal jurisdiction. Well, it absolutely is. And this is a very butchered version of Ontario's natural heritage protection mechanisms. But basically the feds give general direction in some ways to the province, but it's more actually the province gives direction and support in terms of mapping and provincial policy statements to guide municipalities to protect our natural heritage. So there's all this lovely support and direction to the municipalities, and it's the municipalities that have the first levers of control and protection for our natural environment, and that supports all these other pieces of legislation. So they're the first doorway that you knock on. They're the first door to knock on when you're looking at development proposals, permits, reviews. And they do that through their official plans and bylaws. So unfortunately, so we've researched across all of Southern Ontario, so more than 50 upper tier municipalities and the lower tier municipalities. So again, the upper tier municipality will sort of be a guiding document and a guiding template for lower tier municipalities. The lower tier municipalities can strengthen an upper tier municipal directive, just like a municipality can strengthen what the province is doing, and the province can strengthen what the feds are doing. But it is not the feds or the province that has rights to interfere with what's happening at the lower levels. So the scale of focus becomes more and more refined the lower you go. So the most control and power, the first line of control and power is at the municipal level. And lo and behold, Dysart doesn't have the provisions, and because they don't have the provisions in their zoning bylaw, they also don't have processes. And processes don't mean that the bylaws and the provisions don't mean that it's a black and white deal. You know, certainly there are really innovative approaches across municipalities where they have really unique processes like planning applications that you don't have to go through many site specific agreements, but you do a one planning application, and you deal with a planner who says, well, adjust this, move this, do whatever, and now you've got an approval. So there's front end approvals, those are site plan controls, and then there's site alteration controls on the other end. So certainly Dysart has site plan controls, but we don't have site alteration controls. And this was very shocking. When we looked at all the municipalities across Southern Ontario, it is only Dysart that is lacking these. So that was also really surprising. So that's why Grace was in the pickle that, or not, maybe not Grace, because we don't know that she's there, but that's why this situation arose. And I'm not putting the blame on anyone individually. We don't know why this happened, but now it's shown us this big gap in what's happening in Dysart. And certainly Halliburton's overall provisions are weak. So Dysart's official plan says that environmental protected zones will be protected, and yet they have nothing to really do that. They've got the front end, again, site plan controls, but not the back end. So that's a very dumbed down version of what's happening. So Grace or whoever's in that wetland, the wetland was not filled in because of the Endangered Species Act, which is provincial. There is a reason that the Ministry of Natural Resources under the Fish and Wildlife Conservation Act could also have stepped in, but that's a longer debate between us and the MNR, because you need to directly harm a species or harm their lineage or their offspring. And so the interpretation of legislation is always kind of, needs to be revisited, but there is a dialogue opening with the MNR based on situations like this. So it's the province that caught this, where the municipality should have caught this. And indeed, it would be much more it allows creativity to have those right provisions in place, because again, it's not black and white, it's not all in or nothing. Nature is very dynamic, and humans, if we take our time and have patience, can be just as dynamic to find solutions. So it doesn't have to be all development or not. This is what we're doing to raise awareness. So you'll see billboards across cottage country to tell people it takes 60 years to replace one, and that includes the painted turtles. Again, globally, 2/3 of all turtles are on the way to becoming extinct. All of Ontario species are on the endangered or the species at risk list. More than 50% losses, but in Ontario, it's likely more than 70%. In 2017, because I've been working with turtles, or the Land Between's been working with turtles since 2007. We regularly monitor roads and mortality rates. And so in 2017, it happened to be that every weekend was warm and wet, and turtles just were always on the roads when the seasonal traffic happened, and there were 10 times the amount of roadkill. So every kilometer there was a dead turtle. And so when I got to the turtle hospital, the turtle trauma center, with a bunch of injured turtles, they had a record high number, and there was no reason, and there wasn't an increased awareness of the trauma center at that time. So the only reason that could have been was because the number of deaths were through the roof, or injuries were through the roof. And so I declared a turtle crisis, and like my Indigenous dear friends taught me, I put some tobacco down, and I asked the Creator God to help us save some turtles, because these are his species too. And that media release on the turtle crisis went global, and it hit newspapers in Germany, etc. And so because of that, we were able to leverage some support to create a more robust program. And certainly there was more awareness across Ontario, and people helping turtles. In May 2018, the painted turtle was listed federally as a species at risk. So now it's all turtles. So we also teach people how to help turtles, especially snapping turtles. There's really easy ways to carry them. And once you get them in a certain position, they just give in. We hired a lovely young man, William Petrie, who I call the turtle whisperer. He could pick up snapping turtles any which way, and they just relax around him. He started massaging their spine, and turtles can feel through their shells. So they just relax in his arms. We also teach landowners how to protect turtle nests, and we recruit all kinds of volunteers, like our crossing guard program. We've got nest sitters, we've got road researchers, wetland watchers. This is our newest one, our crossing guard program. This actually is modeled after where Grace's hibernation site would be. And so we've got volunteers to monitor these sites with permission in terms of road occupancy permits from the counties that we work in. So we are partnered with 5 different upper tier municipalities for county road work with turtles and across cottage country. We also recruit kids and teach them how to interact with nature and turtles, and they are not afraid of snapping turtles or swimming with them, so they teach parents because we learn from the younger generations. We also are finding that the youth of this, the millennials, are very savvy and have a very different value system and ethics, not ethics, but value system and aesthetic than the older generations. So there's a disconnect between what the mainstream dominant generation is doing to what the next generation wants done in the world, and how it's being developed. And so we're working to bridge that gap in terms of listening to the youth, because they are extremely intelligent and they're not lazy, and they are, they're very discerning, actually. So they're quite impressive, and so that's important. There's Will with a turtle. So that's Will Petrie, who will work with us again this summer. And he's just a lovely guy and just the turtle whisperer. So you can come and meet the turtles at the office. We do a lot of tours for the public. We go out to long-term care facilities, hospitals, Ronald McDonald House, all kinds of different audiences to bring in live turtles. Turtles are very uplifting. There's something about working with them. They're, and I think, again, because the creators imbued them with some sort of magic that you just can feel it when you're around them. They've got big auras, you know, when they're smiling, even if their face hasn't changed. It's quite incredible. So in the past 2 years since COVID, I've used every subsidy possible, and we've had an average of 37 staff. So I'm pretty exhausted.
Yeah. And I just want to if I could, just give everybody the opportunity, and thank you so much. What a great,
I'm almost done, actually, Kristen.
Well,
So
I just think that people I would just like the opportunity for people to ask questions, if it's okay.
Absolutely.
Because
so,
we normally we finish a little earlier. So if it's okay, if everybody could just, if anyone wants to ask any questions to our guest speaker today, this has been quite an informative
great
session.
So, it's illegal to harm a turtle. You can help sign a petition for better provisions locally. And we also have turtle trivia on Earth Day. Come out for that. It's at the hatchery.
Wonderful. Yeah.
These are, we're also putting in turtle underpasses. These are the areas where turtles are getting killed in the Highlands. So we've installed our first one in Gooderham. They're a link to our past and the planet, and they are tending the earth for us. So yeah.
So let's not let those turtles disappear. Very important. Thank you so much.
So yeah, sorry if I talked too long.
No. It's just there's so much information to get out there. So I really appreciate your time. And if you wouldn't mind, just so we can, everybody, you're welcome to, if you could, amazing presentations, some of the comments that are coming through. So that's great. If you couldn't just stop sharing your screen at all, so that we could just have people show their faces, and that'd be great if they choose to. Thank you so much. And if anybody has any questions, just because we know we're running a bit out of time here, but let us know.
I'm very sorry, Kristen. It is late.
No, I don't. It's not meant to be anything. It was clearly an engaging presentation. Everybody stayed and was listening and learning along the way. But if anyone has any questions, now's your chance to ask Lenora about this. About everything that we've learned today. Does anybody have any questions for her? Let's just go to our chat there. I mean, she was so comprehensive, it's probably hard to think of a question that you might have for because there's so much to do and so much to learn about.
I have a question, Kirsten.
Oh, sure. Go ahead, Wendy.
Laura, you're talking about the petitions, etc. Can we access those from your website or?
Yep. Yeah, you can access the petition to Dysart on our website. We've reached more than 40,000 people have signed that petition.
That's amazing. Thank you for that. A question that just has come in and said, where can I find how to make a cage? I've often been getting the turtle crawl up to the cottage driveway. Is there any-
Yeah, so turtles will also gravitate to driveways. If it's safe to cage it, like it's not going to interrupt you, you can see how to cage them on our website, on the turtleguardians.ca website. You can also come into the office. We rent portable next to the hatchery, and you can purchase cages. And then if it's an inconvenient space and you're going to run it over, you just give us a call and we will come and excavate and incubate, and then we will release the turtles at your property with you.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you. Another question that's just come in is, do turtles walk through regular road culverts, or do they need to construct a special turtle tunnel?
So turtles are shy and timid. They really have very little protection. So they're pretty vulnerable. So they need, it's called a certain amount of openness. So they need a bit of light. So it's not just any tunnel that they'll walk through. If it's somewhat wet, like a half aquatic culvert, they'll use it, but it also has to be sort of a ratio of length to size. So a good 1 meter culvert is best, and less than 70 feet long to have that good ratio. I'm using 2 systems of measurement, but you get it.
That's okay. That's okay.
I have a question, Kirsten. It's Bob.
Yeah, go Bob.
So approximately how many different species of turtles live in our area, and what percentage of them are endangered?
So we have 7 of the 8 species in Ontario live in the Highlands. We have less of all the 7. The one that we have very few of are the map turtles. So map turtles like big open water. So we have few lakes like that in Haliburton. So I don't think we have map turtles in Haliburton that we know of, but around us we do. Like Stony Lake would have them for certain. And then all of them are on the species at risk list. The least endangered is the painted turtle, followed by the snapping turtle. And then we've got the spotted turtle that is endangered. We've got the wood turtle that is endangered. And we've got blandings that are threatened, and the little stink pots, the little stinkies, which are just so fun. And they are as well on the list. And so we've got them all. It's just the ones that go on the roads will be the blandings, the painted, and the snapper. The others rarely, their territories are smaller, and they don't, they're not as terrestrial.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you. Are there any other questions out there? So the best way to reach you is through?
So our number is close to the health line, the health services center number. So they're 1212. So we're 1222. So 457-1222. You'll see right at the hatchery, our numbers right on the big board in front at the hatchery on Galert Road, right by the driving range. So it's a nice area close to Lake Kashag. You'll see our PT cruisers on the road in the summer. We've got a fleet of 3 PTs that are ugliest car in the world, but when you paint them, they're kind of fun. So they're painted up, and our phone number's on there. And info@turtleguardians.ca.
Okay, great. Yes, Jan, did you have something you wanted to say? You have to unmute yourself, Jan, if you're going to speak.
Imagine that.
Yeah.
Leora, we recently received a communication from the Land Between charity, which we requesting volunteers and explaining what your program is. We will disseminate that information to our members in the next week or so.
Oh, that's wonderful. We also have a new program to fight Phragmites, which is colonizing all the wetlands. So that's another one. We're looking for volunteers to help get rid of that invasive plant that is choking out wetlands and the lakes. So we've got lots of volunteer opportunities, and thanks for that. And we also have turtle trivia on Friday. So lots of green food and live turtles and prizes and kind of fun for families and especially young ones. If they haven't been out in a while, it's kind of a fun event.
And do you the Turtle Guardians, or that's another role that you have as a volunteer position, or?
Yeah, oh, we've got 5 levels of Turtle Guardians. So everything from level 1, which are all the kids at Turtle Camp, they have to pass the turtle test, and they record where they know how to report turtles to us. So that's level 1 Guardians. And then we've got road researchers and all 5 levels of graduated for all parts of a turtle's life cycle. There are volunteers to help them at every turn.
Well, I do appreciate them as many times if I've been riding my bike along Alert or whatever, and then all of a sudden there's some commotion, you're gonna see the Turtle Guardians there stopping traffic and making it happen.
Yeah, and
So
you can also come
beautiful.
into the office and we'll teach you how to lift a snapping turtle, and
Yeah.
we'll give you lots of practice until and then you kind of laugh at them when they're trying to do stuff. You just like, yeah, you know.
That's
so
great.
We'll get you over the intimidation of them. And if you've got issues around your dock and you're scared, just give us a call. We've gone out and swimming at Horseshoe Lake with turtles with our GoPro to show the kids, and these kids were really afraid of the turtle, and then they named it Bubblegum. So now so got lots of neat stories. And again, these turtles are essential for our wetlands, and without them, yeah, it's going to be a cesspool out there if they it might be a slow decline, but it's definitely not going to be in the right direction that we're headed.
Well, I mean, it's just, and the knowledge base that you have, the endless, you know, we could have gone on forever, we know, but Jan has something that I think she wants to say.
This is our very virtual thank you, Leora, for your presentation tonight.
Thanks. Yeah. And again, I'm sorry it's so late. There's just so much. I never know when to stop sometimes. And especially COVID makes it really hard to read faces. And so I don't know. So anyway, sorry if you're tired.
Thank you.
No, I think that everybody, as we can say, that everybody stayed, and it is totally engaging, as Wendy, and when she introduced you, engaging information, and the thing, there's lots that I think we all learned from this presentation. So we can't thank you.
And Grace is, by the way, Grace is world famous. So herpetologists across the world know her and are watching what happens here. So we might have a good tourism draw too.
There you go. I mean,
we actually have a permit to geo-track her in live time. So if we find her this summer, we're going to install a geo-tracker. So that would be interesting.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a wonderful, we've got a wonderful heritage. We just need to do a bit better in terms of taking care of it.
Well, and I think you're doing a great job of educating us all about it. So we can't thank you enough about enlightening us about everything that you've done and continue to do. And
pick up the lake plan. Pick up that lake plan.
Yeah.
Right.
We're on that for sure as an association. So
it's lovely to see everyone again.
Yes. Thank you very much. So just was amazing, and we can't thank you enough for spending the time with us tonight. So this will be available on our LKO channel afterwards. So we'll have that to go to, and thank you. That's great.
Well, have a really lovely evening, and hope everyone had a good Easter, and we'll talk again.
Yes, you bet. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for everybody. If the LKO board could just remain on, that would be great. But to everybody else, thank you so much for being here. We have one more. Oh yeah, Jan forgot. Yeah, we have one more.
Just a quick reminder to anyone who's still on that our next Love Your Lake series will take place on May the 17th at 7:30 p.m. And our speaker is Andy Gordon. And his topic is where aquatic systems meet terrestrial systems, or you might say where the water meets the shoreline, an important relationship develops. So that will be our next session.
Great. Thanks, Jen. Thanks, everybody. As I say, the board can remain on, but thank you, everybody, for coming. We really appreciate it.